that we have in Python, and also we talk about the control flow statements. And as well, we are going to introduce us on how to create functions in Python. All right, so let's start. Yesterday's class, we were taught on the data types in Python. We were talking about, we taught you about the several data types we have in Python, the list. This class being recorded.
Yes.
All right, thank you. So the types of data types, the list, the dictionary, the tuples, the sets, and so on and so forth. And they talked about quite a number of methods which are available for each of these data types. And we were told that methods are attributes associated with a particular data type. So for the fact that a method works for list doesn't mean that it will work for tuple, or does not mean that it will work for dictionary, or so on and so forth. Now, all these things that you were taught yesterday are building blocks of what we are going to be doing today. And I do say something that whenever you are being taught, especially when it comes to the introductory part of Python, you should note that every concept that is being taught are very relevant, and we need to take note of them and make sure that we know them very well. All right, starting with the if statements. In Python, we have different types of if. We have different ways of defining your if statements. We have your if, ordinary if, we have your if else, and we have our nested if. Now, how do we define a simple if statement in Python? Now, let's say, for example, I have, just like we were taught yesterday, let's say we have f x equals 3, and we have y equals 5. And you want to say if x is greater than y, print x is greater than y. This is a simple if. Look at this. When you want to define an if statement, the first thing you write is your if. When you write your if, it follows by the condition that you want to use, just like you defining a condition. If x is greater than y, and we know that our x is 3 and our y is 5. Now, if you say if x is greater than 5, is greater than y, then print x is greater than y. I'm very sure that every one of us knows why I have this f string here. I use this x as placeholder, so which means even if I change the value of x here and I change the value of y here, it will definitely reflect here. Now, because I'm using an ordinary if, we know it won't print anything because I didn't tell it to print anything if the statement is false. I just said if it is true, tell me that x is greater than y. Now, what if you want to return an output when it is false? In such case, I can just write this. So this is the ordinary if statement in Python. Now, I want to make use of the if else. There are sometimes when you write code, the only thing you need is the if statement. You don't need the else statement. So sometimes you can write code, your if statement, without writing the else statement. Now, what if your condition is not true? Now, the condition we checked for is, we check if x is greater than y. Now, if the condition is false, what will happen? Then we can now print f, and now use our f string by saying x is not greater than y. X is not greater than y. Now, if you print this, you will see that it's telling us that 3 is not greater than 5. Now, there's one thing I want you to notice. Just like I said earlier, if you want to define your if statement, you start with if, followed by the condition. Now, you were taught yesterday during the operator session So we were taught yesterday during the operator session that this is greater than. So we want to make use of greater than in Python, we use this sign. Now, now after defining your if statement, followed by your colon, then your colon, whatever is coming beneath your if statement should, you look at the block that I use. I did not write it here. I start from here because this is the next block after if statement. So you should note that if you should write the code like this, then you put your if here, you print your print here. It is very wrong. You are going to return an error. Why? Because you did not define your if statement. After the if statement, you see indentation error, which means the indentation you provided is wrong. You did not indent the statement well. And your else takes the same indentation with your if. That is just it. Your statement else takes the same indentation with your if. And after your else, you put in a colon. Now, if you run this, we have this. So we can decide to change this. If x is less than y, print x is greater than. Now look at it now. Our x, since this is true, it's telling us that 3, okay, it's because of the way I put in. If x is less than y, print, so this should be not. The statement here is not correct, but you should know that it is printing out the true statement since x is less than y, since x is less than y. So that is how to write the if-else statement. Now, aside from the if-else statement, there's another kind of if, we call it nested if. That is defining if statement inside if statement. So you can define multiple if inside if, right? You can define multiple if inside if. But in such case, there is a kind of, you need to make use of something like a loop. But since we are not getting to a loop now, so we can just skip that for now, but we are still going to touch it today very well. But it's just like saying, okay, let me define multiple if. Now, let's say I have score range. Let's say anybody that scores within 70 and above, 17 and above, we assign A to such person. And anyone that scores within 60 to 69, we can assign B to them. And anybody that scores below 60, we assign, let's say F, for example. Now, this is our condition. This is mostly used when in schools, when you start dealing with GP calculators, or you want to calculate your grade point or something like that. You can use just simple if else if. That is the nested if. So you can just write that if. Now in such case, let me name this score. So let us assume this is our score. So I will have something like int input. Enter your score. Now, in Python, I need to introduce this now so that when we start using it often and often, you won't get confused. In Python, you can define something that will allow people to input anything they want. Look at it. If I should run this code now, it will tell me enter your score. Now, this input function makes it dynamic. It makes you enter a score dynamically. So which means you can put in a score that you want. Now, this enter your score is just like the description of what this input is all about. That is it. So you can put any other description that you want. So, but what I want this description to be is that enter your score. So if I should enter 50, for example, so if you should print score here, if you print score here, it will return 50. Can you see? It will return 50. So that is what I want to use for our if else statement. So I can just say that if score is greater than or equals to 70, let's say just print A. Now, this is the first condition. That's our first if. Now, the second if is If you want to define another if, you make use of the elif. How it means? We call it elif. That means else score if score is less than, let me use less than 69, print B. Now, it's in two ways. How it means? It is in two ways. You can either, okay, let me use this as greater than. After you write your, now look at this, for example. What I'm trying to do here is that if our score is greater than or equals to 70, then it will return A. And if score is between 60 to 69, so that's why I said elif, if the score is greater than, this should be 60, not, is greater than 60. So it will terminate immediately it gets here. And else, anything aside from this, it is going to print F. Now, if I should print 60, let me use greater than or equals to. If I print 60, it will print B. So which means my score is within the range of 60 to 69. Did you get that? If I should print 68, I'm still going to get B. But if I should print 70, I'm going to get A. And if you print anything like 40, you are going to get what? F. This is what we call the nested if. So which means making use of multiple if whenever you want to use multiple conditions. Whenever you want to use multiple conditions. A minute, please. All right. So whenever you want to make use of what? Multiple conditions. So that's how to make use of the if, elif, and else. Now, whenever you are defining an if statement and you are done with the if statement and you've made use of your several if, else, if, else, if, your last statement should end with else, because that else means that any other condition that does not satisfy all the conditions I've mentioned above, then return so thing. So that is what it means when it comes to, that is what that else stands for. So before I proceed with the next one, do we have anyone who has a question? Any question? Any question?
Okay, sir, good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Okay, thank you for the class so far. I want to
Oh,
ask, you were explaining the aspect of error the other time. Do you
yes.
mean that once you are done, let's assume the aspect of if now, once you are
Okay.
done with that chapter, to go to another condition or to another command, you should leave a space between them?
Okay, immediately you are done with this, right?
Yes.
Yes. If you are done with this, you move on to the next line. You can't write
Okay.
it on a single line. You move on to, it is this, look at this colon. It's very important. Once you put in this colon, then it means that you are done defining the if and its condition. So the next line returns the value if that condition is met, while the else returns the value if the condition, that is, we call it otherwise, if the condition is not met. Did you get?
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. So any other question? Okay, so in the absence of no question, I'm going to proceed. Now let's move on to, that is if for you. Now let's move on to loops. Now in Python, we have two different, what's it called? We have two different types of loops. We have the for loops and we have the while loops. We have for loops and we have the while loops. Now, what is the meaning of loops itself? Now, what loop simply means is that whenever you want to perform a particular task over and over again. For example, I want to, every morning, I want to be going inside to, or go to a market to get a particular fruit every day. I want to keep going every day at the same time. Now, in this case, you can make use of loop because it is something that is doing itself repeatedly. So anything that you want to do that pertains to you doing something repetitively, in such case, you make use of loop. Now, these loops are now divided into two. We have the for loops and we have the while loops. Now, when do we make use of the for loops? The for loops is being used when you want to iterate, you want to perform an iteration over a sequence, you want to perform an iteration through a sequence, a tuple, a string, a dictionary, or anything, just a set, anything. So whenever you want to make an iteration, for example, now you have numbers. We have numbers to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And what you want to do is that for each of the numbers, you want to add 5 to them. You want to add 5 to them. For example, for the first number, which is 1, you want to add +5. For the second number, which is 2, you want to add +5. For the third number, which is 3, you want to add +5. In such case, you want to perform a loop. And which type of loop are you performing? It's called a for loop because you want to make an iteration through, in this case, a list. Sometimes it can be a dictionary. Sometimes it can be a tuple. Sometimes it can be through a string. So in such case, you make use of a loop. Now, how do we define a loop? Now we have for. We want to define a loop, a for loop. You start with for. Can you see that this for? Can you see that this for is a reserved word in Python? We were taught yesterday how to check for reserved word in Python. For is a reserved. So whenever you write for, you are trying to tell Python that you want to perform a for loop. Now for I in numbers. Now this is the way the loop works. You need something that would iterate through those elements in the list. One, you need something that will iterate them over and over again. So you can name it something. Now in this case, I would name it I. So which means for I in numbers. Logically, what it means is that for 1 in numbers, for 2 in numbers, for 3 in numbers, for 4 in numbers, up to 9 in numbers. So which means you are performing the iteration over and over again. Now for I in number, print, I just want to use print I plus 5, which means for each of the elements in numbers, I want to add 5 to them. That is what it means. Can you see? The first element is 1, 1 plus 5 is 6. The second element is 2, 2 plus 5 is 7. Third element, fourth element, up to the last element. So that is what the for loop. That is the function of the what? Of the for loop. That's the function of a for loop. Now, what about a while loop? As simple as this for loop is. Okay, let me just write another one. Let's say, for example, you have these new numbers, these 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. You want them also in a list, just like these numbers appears in a list. So let's just name it MOD numbers. So we call it modified numbers because they are modified numbers. So I've defined an empty list. This is how to define an empty list. This is how you write lists. This represents an empty list, or use the list symbol. This also signifies that you are defining an empty list. So I can just say for I in numbers, then mod numbers, which is my modified number, dot append I plus 5. Now, don't forget, yesterday you were taught that one of the list method, one of the attributes of a list is that you can append into a list. So in this case, we are appending. So whatever value, for whatever value that we get here, we add 5 to it and we append it into this empty list. Now, if we should print this, if we should print modified numbers, we are going to have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yes, plus 5 plus 1. So this is how to take care of a for loop. Now, list is an important what's it called, data typing while writing your code. And I will tell you that you should know all the whole attributes associated with a list, because you always need them. Even when you get to the advanced level, you always need them. List, dictionary, and string. Those three things, you will always use them. Always. All right. Aside from this, now let's say I want to use an if statement. Now, this is what I want. This is what I want. I have, okay, let's define a range. Aside from using numbers, these numbers is an existing list, for example. Now, another function that you can use to write a number, or you want to use to write a number, is making use of a range. For I in range 1, 5, print I. Can you see? So this range function helps you to count number. It's just like a counter. It helps you to count. Now, if I say I want to count from 1 to, if I say 1, 5, the 5 itself is exclusive. So you won't include 5 because it will stop at 5 minus 1. That is, let's assume this is A and this is B. It will stop the counting as B minus 1, which is 5 minus 1, which is 4. Now, I want to count from 1 to, let me say, 1 to 101. So definitely this will count for me from 1 to 100. This count will be from 1 to 100, 1, 2, 3, up to 100. Can you see? Now, this is what I want to do. For each of these numbers, I need only the even numbers that exist between these numbers. That is what I need. I'm making use of just for loop. Now, let me define an empty list. Let me call it even. This is an empty list called even. Now, look at it. Inside a loop, you can make use of an if statement. That is why I'm telling you that all these things that are intertwined, you can always use them with each other. Now, if now we know that all even numbers are divisible by 2. That is what we know, that all even numbers, irrespective of how big the even numbers are, all even numbers are what? They are divisible by 2. So logically, the way we think in while writing code, your critical thinking must be very, very sharp. Now, one of the this thing that you were taught yesterday under your arithmetic operator was the modulo. Now, for example, if they should tell you that if you write 5 modulo 3 is going to return 2. So which means that 5 divided by 3 is 1 remainder 2. So it will return the remainder. That is what a modulo means. Now, you agree with me that whenever you find any even number with modulo 2, if you say for every even numbers, if you find its modulo with 2, the result will be 0 because 2 is divisible by all even numbers. So if I should say, now if I modulo 2 equals to 0, now there's two things I want you to note here. This is also an operator as well. It's also an operator as well. Other relational operators that you were taught yesterday, greater than, equals to, less than or equals to, if double equals to, there's difference between 1 equals to and double equals to in Python. Whenever you make use of 1 equals to, you are assigning. 1 equals to means assignment. You are assigning 1 modulo 2 to 0. But whenever you make use of 2 equals to, it means we are making comparison. That's why we call them comparison operator. We are making a comparison. So we are trying to check that if I modulo 2 is equals to 0, then even dot append I, else what will happen? Now I can decide to not use my else statement. I can decide to not use my else statement. For now, I won't use it because I'll still introduce some concept to us. Now, if we run this and we go to the next line and we print even, then you see we are going to have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, up to what? Up to 100. These are even numbers. So if you want to print a list, if you want to print a list and you don't want it to be showing in such a long, because sometimes you want to show from 1 to 1000 and you don't want it to show in such case, you make use of print. After writing print, you use end equals to. Now, this means you should just put a space between them so that they can show in a straight line. Just the way I did it here. It's the same way you can also do. So your print statement also takes in something like end, just like a separator to separate each and every. If not, it will separate them by line. So that is the default separation. So that is it. Now, as just simple as that, we have printed, we have been able to print out the list of even numbers. Now, this is for loop. This is just for loop. So it can sometimes you may need to write some conditions that you have to be making use of nested for loop. You can write for loop inside for loop. Yes, you can write for loop inside for loop. Very much possible. Yeah, it's very, very possible. So you can have that, and you can have if statement inside a for loop as well. Now, another type of loop which we have is called the while loop. It's called the while loop. Now, when making use of the while loop is defined when you want to, it is used when it only terminates when a condition is met. For example, when you make use of while means that while that condition still exists, continue performing whatever I want you to perform. But once the condition does not exist again, it is different from iteration. Here we are not iterating through any sequence or through any list. You are just trying to say that while the statement is still true, then continue working, else you stop. Now, for example, now, just with simple while loop, you can kind of, let me see, you can kind of design a simple guessing game. Just a simple guessing game. Now, let's say, for example, we have, okay, let me first give you a very simple example of why. Now, for I in numbers, this is a for loop. Why I is less than 50. Print I. Now, let me just stop kind of because it will keep printing till infinity. Now, look at this now. What's happening here? For I in numbers, it will start from, these are the numbers, say 1 to, is it here? These are the numbers. Let me see. These are my numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Now, I now said, can you see this is still running? I said for I in numbers. So which means for the first statement, why I is less than 50. Since 2 is less than 50, print I. It will continue printing I. It will not iterate, it will not perform any other iteration. It will keep printing I until, and I don't think I ever be less than 50. Did you get that? So another simple one to make it. I know you'll be thinking that, does that mean that while statements can only be used for something that does not have ending? No, you can always use while statements sometimes to write a limited function. All right, this is just stopping. Sorry. Now let's have here. Now let's say we have count equals to 0. Why count is less than, look at it too, is less than 50. Print count. Let me use end so that we now keep going. Then count plus equals to 1. And count plus equals to 1. Now, if you have this, look at it here. You can see that it stopped at 49. I said while count is, my initial assignment for count is 0. Count is 0. And I said while count is less than 50. Yes, in this first iteration, count is less than 50. True. Then it will print count, which means it will print 0, which is the first value of count. Then you know why I use this end. And I said count plus equals to 1. Now, you were taught yesterday under assignment operator that whenever you have something like this, plus equals to, it literally means that count equals to count plus 1. That's what it means. But we don't write it this way since you are assigning count to count. So in such case, you just use plus equals to. Now, if it is minus, if it is count minus 1, you use count minus equals to. If it is count divided by 1, you use count divided equals to. So that's how you use it. Now, whenever count increases by 1 here, it will come again. It will come again. Count is still less than 50. To print the next count, it will keep going till the condition is met. So it will only stop when the what condition is met. So that is what counts. Basically, that is what count. You use it to run a particular code until a condition is met. Now, in a case whereby, let's say for example, you want to design a simple guessing game, just like the way I said the other time, and you say you can use while true. While true means that while all these statements are still true, while they are still true, okay, then we can define number equals to, you know what this means, int input, then let's say something like guess a number. So you want to guess a number, then our actual number, which means you and computer, you want to play a game. The game is that the computer will guess a number and you guess a number. So if your number tallies with what the computer gets, the code will terminate. But if it doesn't tally, it keeps telling you to continue guessing and keep trying your luck. That is what it means. Raising up his hand. All right. So that is what it means. Now, in this case, we have several libraries that you can use to just generate random number. In this case, I'll just make use of random. So you can just use, now this random will generate just a random number. Now let's assume the guess a number between 1 and 10. Yeah, between 1 and 10. So let's use, this should be up to 11 because 10 will be inclusive. So we are going to print the actual number so that it will not be as if we are having a kind of So print actual. Then what we will now do is, if, can you see, if the number that you guess, which is this, if none is equals to the actual number that this random generates for us, then what will happen? Then print, let's say print, you guess right. So now else, print, let's say something like you are almost there, you're almost there, try again. Then, okay. Now, if you run this, let's see, to tell you to get a number between 1 and 10, if I should press 2 and I run it, my own guessing number is 2. The actual number that this random generates for me is 5. So to tell me, try again, you are not yet there. If I should press 2 again, see, 210 is not still correct. 27 not still correct. 210 not still correct. I know one time it will bring 226, 24, 24 again, 25, 25, 24, 25. So like that. Yeah. Now when I guess 2, you said you guessed right. But you notice that since I guessed right, why is it telling me to guess a number again? Why? The reason is because I'm running all this code inside a while statement, but I did not tell it what will happen if it, I just say while it is true, keep running this code. When it is not true, what will happen? I didn't say anything. Now, since I did not specify, the code will still, even if I guess right, it will just tell me you guess right and tell me to guess again. So that is what it means. Now, if I want the code to terminate, sorry, I had to terminate this. Now, if I want the code to terminate after maybe I already guessed right, then here I use continue. Now, even if I don't use continue to definitely continue, what I'll just do is to use a break statement. Now, there are some statements, there are some special statements that we use in loops. Sometimes we use them in if statements, and sometimes we also use them when defining a function. Now, these statements, basically we have so many of them. You can use aside so many of them. But the ones that are commonly used, we have continue, we have break, we have pass. Now, what does this theory mean? Continue, break, and pass. And when do you make use of this theory control flow statements? Whenever you have continue, continue means that almost there, try again, continue, which means continue will only tell it that since this is else, don't stop, go over to the next iteration. Continue tells you that even if a particular condition is not met, maybe for example, you are performing a loop, we now say for I in so thing, if I is not equals to 2, continue. If you tell it to continue, once it gets to 1, and 1 is not equals to 2, instead of it to stop, because there is not an else statement, it will go to the next iteration, which is 2. So continue simply means that whenever you want to use continue, it means that even if your code is false, just continue with the iteration. Don't stop there. Don't say because it doesn't satisfy this condition, you now wait. No, go over to the next iteration or go over to the next statement. That is what continue means. Now for break, break means that once the condition is not met, just terminate the entire, it will terminate this entire loop, which means it will take you out and conclude that just stop the code that you are running. That is what the break is meant for. Now for pass, which is the third one, pass is just like a placeholder. It's just very lazy. If you say pass, just go. Just does not mean anything, does not do anything, pass does not do anything. That's just it. A pass does not do anything. So that you can use, but for break and continue, they have meanings. But sometimes the fact that pass does not mean anything there are some times that if you don't put anything in that place, your code will write error. For example, you write if none equals to this, you now leave it like this. Print is not there. You want it to pass, so print is not there. You now leave it like this. It will return an error because you did not state anything if the condition is true. Now, in such case, even if you don't want to do anything, you just put pass, just go. That is what pass. So as simple as it is also very important to use them sometimes when they are required to be used. Now, okay, we have print, you guess right. Now this break, we should run this again. So those are the three control flow statements: the continue, the break, and the pass. We have so many of them. We have assert, we have so many of them. But those three ones we would always, and if you don't know their distinction, sometimes I've been writing code and the code keeps getting the wrong answer just because I'm supposed to make use of I used continue instead of using pass. And I had to keep battling with the code over and over again. It was until I started sitting down and reading the code one after the other, and noticed that why did I use continue instead of pass? So sometimes you need to be very careful, should know when to make use of continue, should know when to use pass, and you should know when to use your break statements. Now, if we have this, I guess 2, it gets 6, I guess 2, it gets 6 again, I guess 2, and this is guessing 3, 3, 10, 2. Yes. Now, imagine that when it gets 2, you guess right. And the code, can you see it's not telling me to write since I have guessed right. That is, it's because of this break statement. I said while it is true, you keep running this thing. But once it is not true again, just break. So break means it will take you out of the loop you are using. Now, I also need to note this to you all that your continue and your break can only be used in a place where there is a for loop. Where there is a loop, sorry, when there is a loop. If you don't have loop in that statement, even if you are defining a function, and inside that function, if you have a loop, you can use break anywhere under the block of that loop. But if you don't have a loop, either for or while, and you are using break, you get an error. If I say if 3 is greater than if 3 is greater than 5, break. Can you see? Break outside loop. Why? Because break can only be used inside a loop. Break can only be used inside a loop. Now, we have, even if you use continue, can you see? Continue not properly in loop. So you will still get an error. But you see pass. You can use pass anywhere. You can use it inside a leaf, inside an if statement. You can use it inside a function. If I should put in pass here, can you see to just 3 is greater than just pass. Don't so as and if you don't put anything, you will get an error because it is your function is not yet complete. So in such case, pass you just put pass and you have it done. So that's it. Before I proceed, any question? Do you have anybody with any question? Any question? All right. So in the absence of no question, I will just proceed. Now, the next one, so far I've taught you range. I told you that range we print between the range of two numbers. I taught you the if statements, the if else statement, the nested if statement. We have done the for loop, we have done the while loop. Now you but you also need to practice on how to use them very well, because sometimes you need to write some conditions and you need to be putting if inside loop and so on and so forth. So this one now depends on your critical thinking. During our onboarding, the guest speaker said your critical thinking is less for you, so you have to develop that. And the best way to develop it is you keep writing code. When you get error, you rewrite, and before you know, while you are writing, you are definitely gaining something. And once you get it right, you want to make such mistake again. So the reason why most people that exceed them, we tell you they've been learning for 3 months, 6 months, for 1 year, and they still don't have their bearing yet, is because The only thing they do is that when they see they don't lay hand on projects. I mean, independent project that, oh, this is this project. I don't want to copy what other people are doing, or I don't want to go to one AI to tell him to write. I want to write myself. You can use AI to write code. It's definitely fine. In fact, it is very good. But I'm telling you that if you don't have understanding of what you are writing, in fact, you will just be parabolating, and at the end of the day, you will just notice that you don't even know what you are doing again. And there are sometimes when you write code, something that just requires you to write maybe 3 or 4 lines. If AI should write such code for you, it will write 12, 15 lines for you. And at the end of the day, when an expert sees your code, they will know that this code is definitely not yours, because you can definitely use a simple thinking and know that this is the right approach to the code. So that is it. So please let's ensure that we practice over and over again. Yeah, one thing I also want to talk about before I move on to the function, before I move on to function, is enumerate. There's a function which we call enumerate. Look at it. Let me define a list.
Excuse me,
Let me,
sir.
all right.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay.
Sir, I would love to have the audio version of this class. I think I asked yesterday, but nothing. It was said that it will be sent to us, and I didn't see anything. Please, it's very
The,
important so as we'll be able to actually it will facilitate our practicing. Thank you so much, sir.
the audio recording was sent to the group yesterday night. Are you in the group? Did you join the
You
bootcamp
mean the
group?
WhatsApp group?
The bootcamp group
You mean the
itself.
WhatsApp group?
No, we have a bootcamp group. Check your mail. The link to the bootcamp group has been sent to your mail. Just check your mail and join
All
the
right,
bootcamp. Did you get? So once you join,
all right,
you,
all right,
the link has been pinned. You will definitely get access to the link. And today's own as well will be
all right. Thank
sent.
you so much.
All right, you're
All
welcome.
right, thank you.
Okay, now I said about enumerate. You see, enumerate is another important thing that you need to know. Now, let's say, for example, we have a list. I love numbers a lot, so I will keep using numbers. And let's say the numbers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, for example. Now, for I'm making use of for loop. For I in number. Now, if you want to use enumerate, for enumerate takes in 2 arguments. It takes in the index and the value itself. So which means if I want to make use of enumerate in this case, instead of making use of I'll use I, comma j, because enumerate will produce out 2 outputs. If I say for I, comma j in enumerate numbers, what it means is that for this first one, the I for this first number will be 0. So the first part of the for loop will be the index followed by the value. So this will be 0, 1. Then the second one will be 1, 2. Then this third one will be 2, 3. Okay, let me use numbers that are not following indexes. All right. So if I should say for I in enumerate, I, comma j in enumerate numbers, no wonder I'm saying for I, comma j in enumerate numbers, print I, comma j. Now, can you see? 0, the index for this first one is 0, while its value is 3. So we have 0, 3. So these are their indexes and these are their values. These are their indexes and these are their values. Yes, I'm teaching you this not just because you need to use it now. You may not need to use it now. When you start analyzing data, sometimes you need to make use of enumerate, because maybe you want to make use of iLock or lock and you want to append to an index or something like that. So you need to make use of it. And indexing that we were taught yesterday is very important, and you always use them in every part of your journey. Always make use of indexing. So that is how to make use of enumerate. So instead of making use of for I in numbers, for I comma j, where the I is the index and the j is the value, you can, it's not a must use I comma j. You can use for index comma value, depends on you, but I love something that is very simple, so I use I comma j. All right, so let's move on to functions, which is very important. Now, what are functions? And when do we define functions in Python? Now, when we talk about functions, functions are reusable code blocks. Let me just define it that way. They are reusable code blocks, which means sometimes you may need to write a function that will perform a specific task in such a way that you would want to be using it over, and you want to be doing that thing again, or you want to write that set of code, those code blocks, you want to write it again over and over in your code while you are going. So in such case, you can just define them into a function. So to define a function in Python, you make use of def. So immediately you write def, Python automatically understands that you want to define a function. Now, after def, what follows next after def is the function name. Now, when you were talking about naming a variable yesterday, they told you that the variable that you are naming should be descriptive. Don't name variables that at the end of the day you don't even know what to name, or you just name variable with some nuance words or something. Like name variable that resonates with what you want to do. Now, in this case, now what I want to define a function for is just to write, I want to write a function that will perform the sum of given x and y. Yes, a function that will help me sum the value for x and y. That is just a simple function that I want to write. Now we have defined def. So I'll call the function. Look at it. We have, if I call it the function sum, if I say sum 2, 3, you see that there is no sum. So I will name my function sum. Now sum. Now, after def followed by your function name, the next thing that comes after your function name inside this bracket that looks like a tuple bracket, the next thing that comes there is the input, which means what the argument that you want your function to take in. In this case, I want my function to take in just two arguments, the x and y. So whenever you call my function and you write x comma y, you write the value for x and you write the value for y, then you should do whatever I want you to do. So return x plus y. Now, in this case, now, when you are making use of a function, the print statement associated with a function is called return. With me, the print statement associated with a function is called return. So which means instead of saying print x and y, you just say return x. That does not mean that if you use print, it will not work. Print will work fine. But if you are defining it, when you start writing big codes, just use return so they will know you know what you are doing. All right, so if I should run this function now, def sum. If you want to call your function, you call it sum. Now, x equals to 2 and y equals to 3. See, it returns 5. Now, in some, maybe in other places in my code, while writing, I want to perform summation again. And instead of me writing this code nakedly like this, I'll just call the function. Now, we have different types of function. All these functions that we have been using, this enumerate, all these functions that we have been using, they are system defined, which means they already exist in Python already. Which means you don't need to start defining them. They already exist. But in some cases, some functions does not exist, and you need to create your own function, which means you want to create a user-defined function. In such case, you make use of def. Now we know that to sum two numbers in Python already exists before. It already exists. And you may just make use of the plus sign. So it already exists. So you don't need to start saying that and you want to create function to find the sum of two numbers. But to check if a number, given a number, to check if the number is an even number or odd number, or you want to define a function to check that given a number, the number is a positive integer, the number is a negative integer, or the number is zero. This function does not exist in Python. You need to define the function yourself. Now, just like we said earlier, now we have def. Let's say we want to define functions for even numbers. Now, the function we take in one argument. In this case, I'll call the function name. I'll call the argument none. Are you with me? Then I will make use of my if statement. So which if none 2 equals 0, then you can say return. Let me see if this will work. Return else return definitely the number is not even. The whole number is not even, to be odd. So let's just this is our function now. So if you want to call the function, you call it by its name itself. Call it by its name. So let me move this upward because okay, should be all right. So we have def even, then num equals 5. 5 is an odd number. We write num equals 4. 4 is an even number. If you write 100, 1,000, or 10,000, 10,000 is an odd number. Is an even number. Sorry. So these are functions that you can. Sometimes it can be so complicated. You write so many functions depending on what you need to achieve with the function. Depending on what you need to achieve with the function. Before I proceed, do you have anyone with question? Any question?
Yeah, I have a question, please. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Why is it the output is shown with the quotation marks on it?
Why is what?
The final
Why
output,
is
the
it,
output is like the
why is it
output,
showing?
the
It's
result,
showing with a quotation
the
mark.
result, the quotation. Yeah.
Yes, because this is an int. This is a string. It's in a string. So definitely to return its
Oh,
output in a string format.
okay, that's very good.
Did you get? It will return the
Yeah,
output
I
in a
understand.
string format because it is a string. Can you see that when
Okay.
I define, I make use of the F string. Have you noticed this F
Yeah.
string here make use of a single quote and the F string here make use of a double quote. So it does not really mean. Now, one thing I also need to discuss, let me rename this function to even odd because it's actually fine for both even and odd number. Sometimes you may want to write, when you are defining a standard function, you need to write out what the function is meant for, the arguments that the function takes in, and so on and so forth. So in such case, you make use of a multi-line statement, just like we taught yesterday. You make use of this for a multi-line statement. So you can write this function helps to decide if a number is an even or odd. Then you can now write the parameters. Let me see, write params. So the parameter are x, or let me say num, the number you want to check its status. Let's just call it. Now, if we run this now, this is, if we run this, it will still run because we have not deleted the function. So this is even odd. Now it still retains. But if you should press, if you look at your PC and you press Shift Tab on your PC, if you press Shift Tab on your PC, look at it. You have docstring. Docstring starts with the name of what the function does. This function helps to decide if a number is an even or odd. Then the params, which is the parameters that are available for the function, which is num. It takes in the num parameter. And num means the number you want to check its status. You see, when you are making use of functions, sometimes you want to do some work as a data scientist and you need to make use of some functions in some libraries. And this is your first time making use of those libraries. You need to read documentation. Knowing how to read documentation is a very important aspect. So once you call the function from the library or something, like, you can always click on your Shift tab to help you display what the function does and the argument it takes in. There are some functions that the argument it takes in is a list. There are some functions that argument is always a dictionary. There are some, it depends, but you just need to always confirm for the argument. Now, for this sum that I defined here, if you look at it, we did not write anything. Can you see no docstring? Because I did not write anything. So it is very rare for you to make use of a standard function and you'll be seeing something like no docstring. It means you won't even know how to use it until you go to their website and start checking for the documentation of that particular function. All right, now this is how to define a function. In a function, there's what we call arguments. The inputs are arguments. Do you get it? This input, this num, which means the value that you want to take in inside the function is called input, and we call them arguments. Now we now have different types of arguments for a function. We have the positional arguments. We have keyword arguments. We have default arguments, and we have arbitrary arguments. We have positional. We have positional. We have keyword. We have default. And we have arbitrary. Now, these are the arguments that we have: positional, keyword, default, and arbitrary. Now, what does a positional argument mean? Now, just like its name implies, positional. Whenever you want to pass a positional argument, it means that it will follow a position. Look at this sum now. I said sum equals to s, y. Now, this type of argument, I will still ask you that what type of argument we have here, but I want to say it now. Now, I can also write that my sum function. I can write sum equals 2, 3 to still return 5. I did not say that x equals to 5, x equals to 2, and y equals to 3. What this function understands is that my first argument is my x, and my second argument is my y. Did you get? My first argument is my x, and my second argument is my y. That is what we call positional arguments. Now, whenever you want to call a function, using positional arguments to call a function, sometimes, anyways, you can always use them only if you read the documentation of the function well, or maybe it's an arbitrary argument. You can just use it. Some cases. Now let's now assume that reverse is the case, that truly my x supposed to, I assume that from my own code, maybe you want to perform, so let's say you want to perform exponents. Yes, let's make use of an exponent function. I think that will be better. So let me just copy this. Let me just copy this function again. So this is an exponent function. So I'll name it exponent. You know, exponent means you want to take the power, and we have good. You know, if x is 2 and y is 3, 2 raised to power 3 is different from 3 raised to power 2. Good. So if you have this, and we call this function exponent. So it will be 8 because 2 raised to power 3 is 8. Now, if I now assume that, oh, let's say I'm trying to do an assignment, and from my assignment, my x is 3 and my y is 2. My y is 2 and my x is 3. Then I now put it this way. Then I get 8 and use the 8 to say that's my final output. That would be very wrong. In such case, is either you write it like this. Since my x is 3, my y is 2, you change it so that we can have 3 raised to power 2 equals to this. Or, so this is what we call positional argument, which means following the position or that is used in defining a function. Whenever you want to write an argument using a positional argument, make sure you follow them strictly that, oh, the first value is for x. What is the value for my x? You put it. The second value is y. Then what is this value for my y? Now, if you don't want to do that, the next thing you can do is make use of a keyword argument. Call them with their keyword. That one, in fact, that is the best, because you know from you can even, it's very simple. You yourself, you know that, oh, my y is 3 and my x is 2. Can you see that my y is 3 and my x is 2? Even though I wrote 3 before 2, but because I said x is 2 and my y is 3, it's going to make use of 2 raised to power 3, which is 8. So this is what we call keyword arguments. These are keyword arguments. Now, in a case, sometimes if you should call exponents and you now supply the value for x without supplying the value for y, you will get error, because it will tell you that exponent, which means this function that you define, is missing one required positional argument. Can you see that it is called positional argument? It is missing one required positional argument. Why? You are required to impute 2 arguments. Without those 2 arguments, the function will never work. So in such case, if you should define just one and you leave the other one, the function will return an error. But if in a case whereby you don't want it to return error, in such case, you can make use of a default argument. So which means that what you just do is to assign a value to the function by default. So which means that even if the person does not assign any value, it will take that default value that you have here in place of it. Now let's say my default value for x is 2 and my default value for y is 3. Then if I write exponent, hey, can you see? I won't have any problem because it will make use of the default argument. But if I now want to change it, yes, I want 5 raised to power 2, that will be 25. Can you see I have 25? So it will replace, if I define the argument, you know, this is a positional argument, or I can make use of a keyword argument, x equals to 2, y equals to this. Can you see? So that is a keyword argument. So it will definitely, now you can write y first before x. Since they are both keyword arguments, you can write any one interchangeably. Sometimes this is very essential when you are dealing with machine learning models. Machine learning models have hyperparameters that you yourself, you don't even know their usefulness. You don't know what they are used for. But those people that the library you are using have a default values for those hyperparameters. So if you don't specify any value for those hyperparameters, it will just assume the default and use the default for you. But if, assuming they don't have that, you'll be getting error. You keep, even if it is more than 100 arguments that they have, you must make sure that you cover all the whole 100 arguments. And because of that, to bring about inefficiency in your code, and but it will cause a lot of things. Yeah, aside from this positional keyword default arguments, there's another one that is very important. We call them arbitrary arguments. They are called arbitrary arguments. Now, there are two. There are two. We have args and quads. We have args and quads. We have args and quads. They are called arbitrary arguments. Now, let me give you an example. Now, let's say, for example, you want to make use of ads, for example. And you have, let me see what we can use for. Okay, you have, let's name it. Okay, let me teach you how they are being printed first. Now let me name it argument. This is the name of the function. This is the name of the function. And it takes in, if you want to make use of args, you use star. Now this star means that you are making use of args. That is how to define that we are using an args argument. Now, what are the properties of args? For args take in args take non-keyword, which means they take non-keyword arguments. So which means you don't have to define define a keyword. You don't need a keyword when calling them. You can just write out their names normally and they will print what is being required for you. That is when we make use of args arguments. Now, for example, if I have this and I'll say print args. Now I did not use return, I just use print, so you can use print sometimes. Now, if you have argument 1, 2, 3, it will print everything. It means that it is telling you, it is giving you room to define any length of arguments that you need. These args and quads, most of the time they are being used in machine learning, or when it comes to data science, we use them to so that you can define your hyperparameters. I mean, we use them so you can define your hyperparameters. Now, if we have, let me try this. If we have, let me call this args O. When I run this, then we have 2. Can you see that they are non-keyword? You don't need to define a keyword for them. That is why they are args. You don't need to define any keyword for them. Okay. Okay. Come, let me print the args first. Print args Okay, let me use the following. For I in arts, okay, this will return out the list of number. I'm still wondering why. Let me use okay, the sum is a function. I'm looking for an example of I think I made mistake in the following. Now for I in args, so which means args takes in number one properties of args function is that whenever you make use of args keyword is that they are non-keyword and they are arbitrary. So which means you can enter any amount of inputs that you want for them. If I should write A equals to 2 here now, I'm going to get an error because okay, this is even another error. Let me try it here. If I say A equals to 8, I'm going to get an error because this is an argument. It doesn't take in a keyword argument. They are non-keyword in this case. So if I should write a keyword argument A, which does not exist here, it will return an error. On the other hand, making use of quads, and you should note that args returns tuple. Look at it here. When I use it, they return tuple. But quads return a dictionary. Yes, quag return a dictionary. That is what a quag does. It returns a dictionary, and quags are positional. So which means that you will need to specify a positional argument for it. Now let's say for example we have details. Then you define quags, and I say print quags, for example. Now, if you want to call this function, you have details, then you need to specify argument. If I should say details 1, I'm going to get an error because quags functions are keyword arguments. But if I should say name, if I say name equals, let me say Sarah, for example, and you print this, I'm not expecting to return an error. Print quads. Okay, let me since it is a dictionary, let me use a follow. For I, comma j in quads dot item. Should not get an error. Why am I getting an error? Yeah. You have details. Details takes a positional argument. I'm not expecting this to return an error. Let me use a dictionary, for example. Let me use a dictionary. Let me use a dictionary. Now, I said something earlier. I said for Quark's arguments, they takes in a dictionary, or let me say they interpret their output as a dictionary. They interpret their outputs as a dictionary for Quark's arguments. Now, if you want to define Quark's arguments, you make use of the double star. We use double star we use double star for defining a Quark argument. We make use of double star to define a Quark argument. I'm still surprised why the what's it called? Using a named variable is returning an error in this case, because I'm not expecting it to return any error. So if we have a dictionary of items, let's say for example you have details like let me call it demo, which is demography, equals we have name, we have different names like we have Alice, we have, for example, we have Sarah, then we have age. Now for age, let's say we have 12 and this is 18, and you write this, you have this, and you want to call this into a Quark argument. Once you put in your star, then you can just call in your demo. Can you see it? Print it out as name, Alice and Sarah, age 12 and 18. So this is an example of how Quark's arguments are being called. This is an example of how Quark arguments are being called. Now, we are going to treat an example. It will be like a real world example where we are going to consider using, what's it called? We are going to consider using a real world example. Look at this, for example, we have, this is a problem statement. It says a financial institution wants a simple function to check if a customer is eligible for a loan based on their income, their credit score, their debit to income ratio. And additionally, we want to check if customers with a low credit score but a high income may qualify under certain conditions, or special cases like first-time applicants or customers from specific regions can be accommodated using keyword arguments. So in this case, we'll be using the args and the quarks function. But before we even do that, there's also an argument which we call a function we call lambda function. Now, this lambda function are types of functions that they are very small. You don't really use them for a very big task, but we call them anonymous function as well. And once you want to define a lambda function, we make use of the word lambda. So when you hear the word lambda, that is what a lambda function is used for. Now, how do we use a lambda function, for example? Now, you want to define a function that helps to find the square. Look at this one now that I just write as if this thing. You want to write a lambda function in this case. You can just say, okay, let me say square equals to lambda. You call the name first, which is lambda x. X is something like unknown, such that x, sorry, x square. This is the function. If I should say square 2, is going to return 4 for me. Now, you know that all these other functions, you can define several conditions in there, multiple conditions, for loop, if loop, and the likes. But lambda function is very simple and straightforward, and it's just like a one-line function. It is a one-line function. You can't define lambda function in multiple lines. So in this case, you say lambda x such that x square. So anything you put in x, it will just square them for you. So if you should say square, if you should put square 100 in this case, you are going to have 10,000. So that is what a lambda function, that is what it does. Aside from this, now let's say, for example, now you want to find the sum of two numbers, making use of a lambda function as well. You can just say, let's say we have let me call it sum equals to lambda. It doesn't take only one argument. It doesn't take only one what's it called? Only one argument. You can define multiple arguments in it as well. You can say x comma y. Look at what we did here. We created a function to find the sum of two numbers. You can use a lambda function for it as well. So you just say lambda x comma y such that x plus y. Now if you have this and you call the argument sum 3,7, is going to return 10. So that's what a lambda function is, just like a one-line function. And I can tell you they are very useful, especially when you are dealing with data frame and you need to apply something to a particular series. You can always make use of a lambda function. Now, another example is if you have numbers like 1, 2, 3, and you want to create a lambda function that finds the square of each of these numbers and return it back as a list. If you can, there is something we call map. Now, mapping means you map one value to each other. That's what it means. Now, if you have map lambda x such that I want to square each of these values, I want to do 1 square, 2 square, 3 square. You know, this is a list. This is not just a single value. So I can say x square, comma, I have my a. Now, if you should have this, you are going to have a map. It will not return it as a value, but if you want to print it in a list, you put everything inside a list. So when you put inside a list, can you see 1 square? So which means it will map a is a list. It will map the first value of a with x square, which means 1 square. The first value of 2, that is 2 square, which is 4, and the third value, which is 3 square, which is what? Which is 9. Now let's look at this. Aside from this lambda function, you can also use lambda function with, there's a statement which you call the filter statement. You can also use it. Now, numbers equals, I'm coming. Now we have a list of range from 1 to 100. So I'll call it num 1 to 100. Now these numbers, now you want to make use of the filter statement. Now what will you filter do? What will filter do? I can use a lambda instead of me creating a, you know, I created a function the other time. to find even numbers. And I used a loop to find even number for I in range 1, 100. If I modulo 2 is equals to 0, you can use just lambda function and everything will be done in just one line. So what we just need to do is to use lambda x, such that x modulo 2 equals to 0. Next, modulo 2, that's for even numbers. So we want to print numbers that are even numbers. Then we are dealing with this number. If we should have this is a filter. Can return it in a list. Can you see? Can you see? These are only even numbers. So instead of you, so it depends on how well you can write code. They told you to define a function to find even numbers. You are using 7, 8 line. Another person just define that in just one line. So it is always like that. So making use of filter will help you filter only when the condition is true and return those values when the conditions are what? They are true. So there are so many things that you can also do for a lambda function, which I may not want to cover. We have the reduce, we have what's it called? We have sorted. So you can always read that yourself. So, but for this one, let's treat this for the remaining minutes we have left. All right. So in the absence of no question, now they said we want to write. If you are a data scientist or a data analyst and a financial institution is interested in writing a simple function to check if a customer is eligible for a loan. Now, this loan, to know if the customer is eligible for a loan based on some certain conditions, and the condition is based on their income, their credit score, and their DTI, which is debit to income ratio. So what debit to income ratio simply means is just like a metric that is being used in all these financial institutions to measure the individual's ability on how well they can manage their debt. So we call it debit to income ratio, and it is calculated making use of the total monthly debt payments the person wants to pay by divided by their gross monthly income multiplied by 100. That's why sometimes when you let loan, they tell you how much do you earn monthly. They will now look at how much you want to pay monthly if they should give you a particular loan. You want to collect 5 million and you said how much are you earning monthly? You said this. At the end of the day, they will tell you that sorry, sir, you are not eligible for social loan. You are not eligible to take a loan of 5 million. You are eligible to take a loan of 200,000. All these things are measures. We have ways of calculating them. So this is just like a real broad example of when you can make use of function. You can't expect me to keep writing this code over and over again. You cannot. The more the company or the financial institution be able to increase or basically lay our foundation upon. And let's name the function check loan eligibility. Now, argument comes before keyword argument. So which means we are defining your function, your position argument should come first, which are non-keywords. So before, so here we are going to use ask, comma, twice. So we want to define their loan, we want to check for their loan eligibility. So we can write something like function to check if a customer is eligible for a loan. So these are our description. You can write other things. Now, what we need to do is, since they are positional arguments, we assume that the first thing the person a function is the person's income, followed by, so they said we should make use of income, credit score, and debit to income ratio. So the second thing will be the credit, let me call it credit score. Credit score, then followed by the, let me call it DTI. So this we take in the acts. So this is the acts. So whenever the person income enter three values, they are non-positional, they are non-keyword. So the first one automatically stands for the income, the second one the credit score, and the third one the DTI. So we have minimum score income. So we have to define our minimum income is quarks dot get. So we have that get mean income. Come on, let's say the minimum income is 30,000. So we as a financial institution, we assume that the minimum income is 30,000. Now, do you know why? I told you that Quartz uses a dictionary. Now, a dictionary has a method which we call get. That's why I'm making use of get. Now, if I should define, I have a dictionary up here. Let me just be swift with it. And the name of the dictionary is demo. Write demo. This is a dictionary. If I say demo dot get name to print out Alice and this thing. But if I say demo dot get ID, ID does not exist, so it will not print anything. But in the case whereby we want to do it in such a way that even if the person does not impute anything as ID, we want to replace something with the ID. So you can just say, let's say 10001. Can you guys see me?
Yes, we can hear partially. Not at all anymore. I can't hear you anymore.
Hello, are you still with me?
Yes, I'm with
We
you.
are back now.
Hello, please, if you can hear
Yes,
me,
sir,
kindly
we are with you,
signify.
but something from your side is the issue. We are with you.
Yes, we are with you.
All right, so let me just proceed. I think you guys can hear me better now.
Yes, we can hear you. Please proceed.
Please, how can I write attendance? Oh,
Okay, now, if in a case whereby we have, ID does not exist for this demo, and we have demo.get ID, in such case, you can provide a default word for it. Can you see? Even though ID does not exist, it will just, since anytime a person calls the word ID, it will replace it with 1001. That is what we want to do here. So if minimum income, if minimum income does not exist, you can just assume that our minimum income is what is. So now we define a minimum credit score as well. A minimum credit score. So our minimum credit score we also equals to quarks dot use get. So let's use it as min credit score. So let's assume that the default minimum credit score is 650. Let's just assume that. Then we have maximum DTI, which means if you should exclude, if you should pass this DTI, then in fact you can't get any loan from us. So dot get. So you can also use max DTI. So let's assume 40. Now, while writing code, please always ensure that you make comments sometimes, because sometimes you write code and you forget what your code is all about. So if the minimum score is greater than or equals to minimum income, so these are conditions for standard loan. If your minimum score is greater than or equals to your minimum, if your income is greater than or equals to minimum income, and also your credit score is greater than or equals to minimum credit score, and also your DTI is less than, I told you your DTI must be low, so that your DTI is less than the maximum DTI. Then in such case, you should be eligible for loan. So we are going to return eligible for loan. So we won't define the else statement. I told you you can decide not to define else. Now let's do another one. Now if quacks.get, if for example we have a place whereby this person is a first-time customer, because they said we have done this, we know to do special cases like first-time applicants or customers from specific region. Now, if we want to do first-time customer, we can say is first-time, let's call it is first-time applicants. So if it is his first-time applicant, by default, we are setting the first-time applicant to be false. So for first-time applicants, if the income is greater than or equals to the minimum income, with me, his income is greater than the minimum income, and his DTI, his debt to income ratio, is less than, for first-time applicant, it's most likely that their, what is it called? Their credit score is low or something like that. So their maximum DTI. So we can now specify a tight range for the maximum DTI, so that we are going to be able to capture, some people will just claim that they are first-time applicants, and before you know, they will just dupe you and they will not repay their loan. So we can create a kind of a tight or a strict DTI, which means you can reduce the debit to income ratio by 10. Instead of making it 40, you can reduce it to 30, that even if you are a first-time applicant, you must meet this eligibility. So in such case, we have return so this would be, what should we call it? Hence eligible under first time applicants. So we won't define if for it as well. Now for the third one, which is for the region, are with me? So we can say region equals to what again? Dot get region. So by default, the region will be none, which means we don't want to have a default region. Facts.get none. Then we can now say if region. So we want to favor those people in the rural area. So we can say if region equals to rural. So if the person is from a rural area and their income is greater than or equals to the minimum income, people in the rural area may not have a lot of income like that, and we want to borrow them to 0.8. So which means we want to subtract 20% from the minimum income. If the minimum income here is 30,000, so we want to subtract 20%. So we multiply the minimum income by 0.8. So that will give us the value for it. Okay, so we are going to return eligible under rural program. So if all these conditions are not met, so we'll just say return not eligible for loan. So this is a simple thing. I've made mistake in one of the arguments. Oh, I didn't cover this. All right, now we have our function to determine loan. So we can test if this function actually works. Let's just, we are already far behind. Let's check. I want to call this function. This is check loan eligibility. Now in this case, ask argument comes before quads, and I told you that quads, ask arguments are non-positional. So we can just assume that the income is 28. Let me say 50,000, for example, is 50,000, followed by the credit score. Let's say the person's credit score is 700 and his DTI is 45. Are with me? And his minimum income. Let's say we now want to specify our own. You can decide not to specify minimum income. If we run this, the person is not eligible for loan. Why? Because let's see, our condition is that the minimum income is person income is 50,000 and the minimum income is 30,000. Now the minimum income, the person's income is greater than it. Yes, fine. Now for the minimum credit score is 650 and the person's credit score is 700. Yes, but for DTI this is 40 and this is 45, and we know this must be less than the maximum DTI. So because of that, the person is not eligible for loan. Now we can add extra arguments. For example, you want to, this, all these are just use, I make use of only the ask argument. You can decide to make use of one of the quads argument, which is region. Look at it here. This is it, region. So you can say region equals to rural. So when the region is rural, it means the person is eligible for loan under the region argument. So you can make use of other this thing. In fact, you can make use of params. Let's say we have a list of parameter. You can have your minimum income. I don't want to start doing that. So this is just a simple function to satisfy this condition, to check if a person is eligible for loan or the person is not eligible for loan. Any question? Any question? Question. All right, please. Those are no reason.
I think some people are raising up their hands.
Okay, please. Kindly unmute yourself and ask your question. I'm saying Shamaka. Do you have any question? Okay, Abdul Kudus. No question. What about I said Abdul Qadir, sorry. Abdul Qadir Bashir.
Sorry, that may be a mistake. I don't mean to raise my hand. Sorry.
All right. Salahuddin Ayabani. Okay. Bala Meidija. So you're using your hand.
Yeah, I have a question, sir.
Okay, please kindly
Can you?
ask your question.
Yeah, with regard to the issues of region, can I, if somebody wanted to use specifically like a list of state, for example, you have some specific state like 7 or 8 out of Nigerian state that you wanted to, if persons come from that region, is eligible for the loan. How are we going to put it? Are we going to use? How are we going to put it? Let me say, in short.
Okay, in the case where you have states, in your function, in this, in your if statement, you specify those states that are eligible for loan in the state. Now, in such case, you may have a lot of states. Maybe you have Abuja, you have so many states. You can use if, you can use in. There is a membership operator we were told this, which is in. You can say for I in, then you write out all the states that are eligible, then you write out their requirements, which means maybe their requirement is income is greater than or equals to this. And for those people that does not belong to those states, you also specify their own requirements based on their credit, their income, and their DTI. Did you get that?
Yeah, I understand, but it's going to be more cumbersome than this one, sure.
Okay. Okay. You name it states. It will be dot get state. So the name will be state. Then in your own function, when defining your function, you will now state, in this case now, we have region. It can be urban, it can be rural. But here we now make use of if region is rural. So anytime the region is now rural. So in such case too, you say, since this is only rural, but here we want to deal with more than one state, you now say for I in, let's say you name it state, for I in state, if state equals to, or if state in, if it is in form of a list, use in is membership operator, then you write the list of the states, then underneath you write their requirements, then for other ones else, you can just use else, you write their requirements too. So it's a bit complex, but at the same time, it is a very simple logic that you can apply. You can follow the same step to achieve the same thing for them. So that
Yeah,
is
I
that's
get
it.
to understand that when
All
you
right.
mention list, so I can be able to declare like a list on top for the list of
Yes,
the
yes,
state.
yes,
So
exactly.
when I come to give statement, then I can reference to that one, isn't?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, that's very
All
good.
right.
Thank
So
you.
we have come to the end of today's class. Um, Thank you for attending today's session. And we still have a lot to learn. This is just the beginning. We are just starting. We still have a lot to learn. So you'll be sent your assessments after the class, and the assessments you'll be sent a .ipynb file, which means a Python file. So you have to check the file and edit the file. After editing, the link for submission will also be sent to you. So in this link, you fill in your email, you fill in your ID, then you upload your modified Python file. I'm going to share the file for you. I'm going to tell you what you need to do. I'll just put you through so that it can reduce the questions that we'll be having. Now, this is the assessment, week one assessment. So, so you have the email, you put in your email, you fill in your, when you click on the write your email here. So, who is that? I can hear myself. Thank you. So, you put in your email here and you put in your ID. So after that, this section one, these are declare a variable name with your first and last name. You just write the output here. You assign three strings, you write your output here. Then you run it. You run it. You want to be seeing the output. Which letter belongs to index 3 in the code? You write this. Define a string and convert all to an uppercase. You write it here. What is the correct syntax to merge this? You write it. So you fill in the details. So that is for section one. And section two, you have to modify a function for eligibility checker for health insurance plan. Now, you are tasked with creating an health insurance checker for a health insurance company. So the company wants to determine if a person qualifies for a specific health-based health plan based on the following criteria. So these are the criteria for checking if the person qualifies: the age, the body mass index, the pre-existing condition, and the special case. Now, this is the code. You have been given a code. You are not told to write it from the beginning. You have been given a demo. So what you just need to do is to click on this, then you copy this part of the code, you copy it, you copy it. So when you copy it, you create a new cell and you paste it here. So this will appear in code cell. Then you edit these places where we have, you fill in these places where we have slash, you remove the slash and fill it. So when you, after filling it, then you copy this code to one after the other and you run them in a code block. Now, if you run this first one, it is expected that it returns that eligible for health plan. So you should also check if your modification is right or wrong. So that is that for your assignment. And I think that is all. I'm done with today's class. Thank you.
Okay, sir. I want to ask something, sir.
Okay.
Do we need to install the Python on our system?
Yes, you need to install it.
Yes, you need to install it.
Please, how do we go about that, sir?
You need to watch yesterday's
yesterday's
recording.
Okay, sir.
Steps in downloading and installing Python itself has been treated yesterday.
Okay, okay, sir. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Secondly, sir, for the attendance, please, I tried to click on the link, but it's not displaying at all. So I did not mark any attendance yesterday. Likewise, I was unable to mark that of today too. Please, how do I go about that?
Please message me.
All right.
Message me on WhatsApp.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, please, what's your name on WhatsApp?
Simplicity, I'm the admin. I'm one of the admin. You see my name, Simplicity. I send
Okay, thank you.
Updates frequently. See my name.
Sorry, sir. Please, when is the deadline for submission of this assignment?
Yes, when the assignment is sent, it will be sent with deadline. So you will see this deadline assigned to the assignment. So, but it should be between Wednesday or Thursday, either of the two, because the assignment must be submitted before the next class.
Okay, sir.
All right. Thank you very much, sir, for the wonderful presentation. I must say you've really done a very great job. Thank you very much, sir. We really do appreciate that. And for all our participants for today's class, thank you very much for attending. And I hope we've been able to learn one or two from today's class. And I have to admonish us to please lay our hands on all these things. The video for yesterday's class has been sent to the group, to the Bootcamp WhatsApp group. So kindly check your mail, check your respective mails for the WhatsApp group so that you can be added to the WhatsApp group where you can get updates concerning the Bootcamp. So for yesterday's class, the recording has been sent. So kindly go through it, watch it over and over again until you understand every bit of the concept. And for today's class as well, the link for this class will be sent to the group as well. So kindly go through it. Make sure you lay your hands on it. One thing about Python is you just have to keep practicing. Practice is very, very important so that you don't forget whatever you have been taught. You need to lay your hands on it. That's the only way you can know that you are actually learning. By watching videos, you might think you understand, you know what they are doing, you know what's being written. But I tell you that it is when you lay your hands on them, it is when you try them out that you will know that, oh, I still have a lot to learn. I still need to practice. I still need to learn more. And please ask questions. If there's anything you don't understand, that is why we have the WhatsApp support group. Ask questions on whatever you think you don't understand concerning the whole bootcamp process. Then one other thing for those asking about the that they are not able to open the attendance sheet. It might be your connection, it might be your browser, it might be, I don't know, but if you are still battling with it, just like the instructor for today has said, kindly send a DM to him on WhatsApp so that we can rectify the problem. Then for some people were asking for the link for class. The link for our classes is just a single link and it has been sent to our mail right from day one. So check your mails very well, check your spam, check your inboxes, check your mail to get the link for the classes. So for the subsequent classes, we are going to use the same link. And when filling out your attendance form, take notes. Some people are getting errors while filling out the attendance form. That is because they are using a wrong email address. Use the email address you use for registration. That email you use to register for this bootcamp is the email you should use for your attendance, and the ID that has been sent to your mail. So those are the two important details that we need for your attendance. So kindly go through your mails very well to get those details as appropriate. I don't know if there are questions or regarding what I just finished saying. I think someone dropped a message just now. Yes, for those that have clicked on the link to join the WhatsApp group and you are yet to be admitted, you will all be admitted in due time. Just give us some time. We are going to admit you into the WhatsApp group. So I think that will be all for today. Thank you very much once again, everyone. We really appreciate. And for your assessment, the assessment will be sent to you either by today or by tomorrow. You'll get your assessments, and just like it has been explained, you have to the IPY NB file will be sent to us. So make sure you do your assessment and submit before the deadline. The deadline is going to be before the next class, which is next Saturday. And make sure you practice and you do your assessment very well. So thank you very much once again, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.